Welcome to problem solving lesson number 3. Our strategy focus today is to write an equation. That's how we're going to solve our word problems, writing an equation. And if you're in my classroom, you know we have a power pick for equation, and it means that it is a number sentence with an equal sign to show that quantities are equal. So let's get started with our practice problem in this video, and then in the next few days I'll give you some more problems to solve using this strategy, writing an equation. Let me choose my highlighter, and let's begin by reading the problem. That's the first step, and we're going to do real reading. So we are going to have to pause after every sentence and think about the information that the problem is telling us. On Monday, Mrs. Chan drove 55 miles in the morning and 20 miles in the afternoon. Okay, there's a period, so stop and think. What information did that sentence just give me? Well, Monday, that's important information. It tells me when it happened. And 55 miles, she drove 55 miles in the morning. That's a very important prepositional phrase because that's in the morning. And 20 miles in the afternoon. So on Monday, if I wanted to find out how many miles she drove for the whole day, I would add up 55 plus 20. So there's a little mental computation of an equation in my head. Now let me switch colors and read the second sentence. She will drive 10 fewer miles on Tuesday than on Monday. 10 fewer. Fewer means less than, so I'm going to have to subtract from what she drove on Monday. Let's switch colors and read the next sentence. She has enough gas left to drive 60 miles. All right, that's important. She's got enough gas to drive 60 miles. And the question is, does she have enough gas to drive for Tuesday's trip? Right. So let's reread this problem. And I'm going to switch to my tablet. Here, let me pull that over. There it is. Okay, reread. Think about these questions as you read. What is the problem about? All right, well, it's about how many miles she drove. Okay, on Monday and on Tuesday. What kind of information is given? Well, they tell us the miles she drove for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. And they want to know, what am I asked to find? They want to know, does she have enough gas? All right, so we've thought about the problem now. We're going to go back and search for some information. That's the next step. As you read the problem again, think about the details that are given. You cannot solve these types of problems very quickly. They're not problems like 1 plus 1 equals 2. Those are problems where you can very quickly, in a second, come up with the answer. But these types of word problems that we're solving, they require you to read the problem and then to reread, that means read it again, and do real reading. So you have to pause and think about your information. What is the text telling you? And now we have to do step 2. We have to mark the text. That means highlighting or underlining or circling important information as we search for the information that will help us answer the question. So what numbers will help us solve this problem? We know Mrs. Chan drove 55 miles on Monday morning, and we know she drove 20 miles on Monday afternoon, but they were both on Monday. The problem also told us that Mrs. Chan plans to drive 10 fewer miles, and we said fewer means less than. Finally, it told us that Mrs. Chan has enough gas to drive 60 miles. So that's the information they've given us, and we're going to use it to decide how to solve this problem. Okay, so step 3, decide what to do. You know how the number of miles Mrs. Chan drove on Monday is related to the number of miles she will drive on Tuesday. We know on Tuesday she's going to drive 10 fewer. And we know how many miles she can drive with the gas she has left. She can drive 60 miles. So we're going to write an equation to find out, does she have enough gas to drive for Tuesday's trip? So let's see how that looks in the next step. We're going to use our ideas, and they've kind of broken this down even further. Write an equation to find the total miles Mrs. Chan drove on Monday. And we kind of did this mentally already, but they took the morning miles of 55, and we're going to add that to the afternoon miles. Remember, that was 20. So there's our equation. 55 plus 20 equals the equal sign, meaning that quantities are equal. And so 55 plus 20 equals 75. That's right. You probably did that in your head. Step 2 wants us to find how far Mrs. Chan will drive on Tuesday. Well, the second sentence told us that if she drove 75 miles on Monday, she was going to drive, remember how many? She was going to drive 10 fewer. Fewer means we have to subtract. So there's that subtraction symbol. And you can probably do this in your head as well. 75 minus 10 means she drove 65 miles on Tuesday. So now we're going to compare that answer to the 60 miles that she has enough gas for. We're going to take this 65 that she wants to drive on Tuesday and put that here. And we know she has enough gas for 60 miles. So we're going to compare those. We're going to use the greater than, less than rule. And remember, the arrow always points to the smaller number. So the answer here would go like that because 60 is smaller than 65. And so we're going to finish up by saying, does Mrs. Chan have enough gas to drive for Tuesday's trip? Well, no, she doesn't because she wants to go 65 miles, but she only has enough gas for 60 miles. So the answer here is no. She will drive 65 miles on Tuesday, but she has enough gas only for 60 miles. She would run out of gas before her trip was over. So that's how we write an equation to solve the problem. Finally, at the end, review your work. Be sure that you have answered the question and ask ourselves, how does writing an expression or equation for the total distance Mrs. Chan drove on Monday help you solve the problem? And well, we can use that number to find out how many miles she will drive on Tuesday. All right, and that solves the problem. So you're going to be using an equation. Here's an example of an equation. 55 plus 20 equals 75. Here's an example of another equation. 75 minus 10 equals 65. So we used two equations to solve this one problem. So be prepared to do just that. Remember, learners never quit and quitters never learn. So persevere until you can solve complicated word problems by writing an equation.